My 14-year-old daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, your time is over." My husband was sitting on our couch with my baby sister's hand resting on his shoulder, like she already lived there. "Tell me, how are you supposed to come back from that?" "Hey, I'm Naomi, and this is the story of how my whole family tried to replace me in one night, and how they told me I was done, and how I decided to prove every single one of them wrong. You can decide for yourself if I went too far, or not nearly far enough." It was a Thursday evening, and I remember that door like it was yesterday. I had just flown back from Atlanta after closing the biggest marketing deal of my career, 7 days of meetings and late nights, and the front door of my own house felt heavier than usual when I pushed it open. My suitcase wheels scraped across the hardwood like nails on my nerves, and immediately I knew something was off. The house was quiet, but it wasn't that cozy, peaceful kind of quiet. It was heavy, thick, loaded like the whole building was holding its breath. I walked toward the living room, and there they were, lined up like they were waiting for a performance. My performance. My husband, Brandon, was on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the carpet like it had the answers. My little sister, Candace, was perched on the arm of that same couch in a green dress I had bought her for her birthday, her hand sitting on his shoulder, not casually, but like she owned the place. My mom, Gloria, was by the window, already crying, tissue in hand, like she came prepared. And my daughter, my baby girl, Brianna, 14 years old, sat across from them in the armchair, arms crossed, face carved out of stone. Nobody said a word. No, "Hey, you're back." No, "How was the trip?" Nothing. Just the ticking of the mantel clock and 4 pairs of eyes on me. I stayed standing in the doorway with my purse still on my shoulder and my carry-on sitting by my feet like I was the guest in some weird family intervention. My mom was the first to speak, of course. "Naomi, we need to talk," she said, and her voice cracked on the last word. Those 4 words right there, they have never meant anything good in the history of relationships. "We need to talk." My throat went dry just hearing it. I looked at Brandon, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Candace, and her jaw was set like she'd rehearsed a whole speech. Mom was halfway to a meltdown. Then I looked at Brianna. That one hurt, because the look in her eyes wasn't fear or confusion. It was something that made my stomach drop. Pity mixed with this cold kind of contempt, like she'd already decided how this was going to go, and I wasn't the winner. And then she opened her mouth and said the sentence that split my life into a before and an after. "Mom, your time is over. Dad is happier with her now." Let that sink in for a second. Your own child, the one you stayed up with while she had fevers, the one you drove to practice and helped with homework, looking you dead in the face and basically firing you from your own family. If it were you, what would you have done? I swear for a few seconds my brain just kind of froze. I could hear the words, I understood the grammar, but my heart and my head were not on the same page. Dad is happier with her now. Her meaning Candace, my baby sister, in my dress, in my living room, with her hand on my husband's shoulder while my mother watched. And here's the part that might surprise you. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't start throwing dishes, even though, honestly, I would have had the right. Instead, I felt something cold click into place inside me, like a switch being flipped. In that moment, I realized exactly what was happening. This was not a conversation. This was not, "We need to talk." This was a staged ambush, an execution of my role, a little family ceremony they had clearly discussed without me. I looked at each one of them again slowly, like I was memorizing their faces. Brandon with his guilt and his relief that it was finally out. Candace with her nervous, "I know this is wrong, but I'm still doing it." Look, my mother with her tears, who had clearly known for a while, and my daughter, my own child, looking at me like I was already gone. And I thought to myself, not out loud, just in my head, "You picked the wrong woman to ambush." So I simply turned around. Behind me, I heard Brandon's voice suddenly grow stronger now that my back was turned. "Naomi, wait, we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what happens next." Like we were talking about vacation plans. My mom sobbed, "Don't leave like this, honey. We're family. We can work it out." Family. That word used to mean something, you know what I mean. I picked up my suitcase, tightened my grip on my purse, walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away from the house I had bought with my inheritance money and turned into a home for people who just told me my time was over. That was it. No dramatic slam, no goodbye speech. I just left. And here's the crazy thing. The world didn't end. I pulled out of my driveway, and the sky was still pretty. The traffic lights still worked. People were still out walking their dogs like nothing had happened. My life had just detonated, and the rest of the world was on autopilot. And there was this weird moment where I realized something they hadn't thought about at all. They thought they were writing my ending that night, but really they were writing their own. That thought stayed with me. I drove with no plan, just away. Away from that living room, away from their faces, away from those words echoing in my head. I ended up downtown in front of one of those business hotels my company uses for conferences, the kind with polished floors and too many lamps. I parked, grabbed my bag, walked into the lobby still in my work clothes, and said, "I need a room." "For how many nights?" the woman at the front desk asked, all cheery and professional fingers flying over the keyboard. "Now, how long does it take to figure out what to do after your kid and your husband and your sister declare you obsolete?" I had no idea. "A week," I said. "Maybe longer." In the elevator, I remember watching my reflection in the mirror. Same dark hair in a ponytail, same brown skin, same work blazer. But I didn't recognize the eyes. They were too calm, too focused. In the room, I plugged my phone in, took a shower so hot it turned my skin pink. Then I crawled into bed, expecting that movie-style breakdown, the screaming, the sobbing, the curled up on the floor thing. And you know what happened? Nothing. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling this cold, clear rage rising up where my heart used to be. And at some point, I fell asleep. The next morning, sunlight came through curtains that weren't mine, and for 3 perfect seconds, I forgot. Then it all rushed back. The couch, the green dress. "Your time is over." I turned over and reached for my phone. The screen lit up and almost blinded me with notifications. Missed calls, texts, voicemails like my phone had had a panic attack while I was sleeping. Call log first. Brandon. My mom, Candace, my kid cousins. A couple of friends, all stacked up. 118 missed calls. I opened the texts. "Naomi, please answer. We need to talk like adults. Sweetheart, just come home. We can work through this. Don't do anything rash. It just happened. We never meant to hurt you. Please. Let's talk. We fell in love." "Mom, where are you? Everyone is freaking out. Dad thinks you're going to do something crazy. Just tell us you're okay." Every message was this disgusting mix of worry, guilt, manipulation, and entitlement. Like I was the one being unreasonable for not sitting down in that living room and helping them map out my own replacement. I scrolled and scrolled, feeling that cold rage get sharper with every line. Then I put the phone face down on the bed and walked over to the window from the 8th floor. Friday morning looked completely normal. Cars crawling in traffic, people heading to work. folks with Starbucks cups just living. And I thought, I'm 32. I've been married 12 years. I've busted my butt, building this career and this family, and apparently I'm this easy to swap out. Disposable. Replaceable. And no, that wasn't going to be my story. I stood under the shower again and let myself replay the last year. Not the cute moments, but the red flags I had filed away as, he's just tired, she just needs family, all the excuses we make when we really don't want something to be true. 3 months ago, Brandon stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. 6 months ago, Candace started dropping by a lot more. Always when he was home, always staying for dinner. 8 months ago, he joined a gym and got weirdly protective of his phone. 10 months ago, family dinners had this strange undercurrent looks being shared over my head, my mom shifting in her chair. I had seen all of it. And the worst part? I chose not to see it. Because I trusted them. When I got out, I put on the thick white hotel robe, sat down at the desk with my laptop, and that cold in my chest turned into something useful, a plan. First thing I did was change every password, and I mean, every one bank's credit cards, email, social media, even the stupid streaming services. Then I logged into our joint checking account, the one we'd used for years for bills and groceries and school fees. The number staring back at me did not look right. I started scrolling through the transactions, and as I went further back, my eyebrows just kept climbing a very nice Italian restaurant downtown. I had never been to a jewelry store known for being stupid expensive hotel charges in the same city where we lived. Flower deliveries, boutique, clothing, lingerie from a place I sure hadn't visited. A pattern started to emerge, romantic life, just not with me. I opened a spreadsheet and started logging everything, date, business amount. Little note on the side like, definitely not groceries. Then I checked our savings account, which was supposed to be our safety net, and felt my stomach flip again over the last 8 months. Money had been trickling out in small chunks. 2,000 here, 3,000. There, never enough to trigger a bank alert. But together, $15,000 gone. Our money, my income, funding my husband's relationship with my sister. You know that switch when embarrassment burns off and all that's left is fury. That's where I was. I screenshotted every page, saved them to a folder I named Evidence, then uploaded that folder to 3 different cloud accounts. If Brandon decided to get cute and start deleting things, I already had copies. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Then I did what any woman in my position with Wi-Fi and a functioning brain would do. I opened a new tab and searched best divorce lawyer near me. One name kept popping up with glowing, slightly terrified reviews. Aggressive, doesn't back down, gets results. Rebecca Shaw. I called her office and booked the earliest appointment they had Monday morning. When I hung up, I stared at my laptop for a second. Then I opened yet another tab and started searching for private investigators. Because I didn't just want to confront him, I wanted proof, timestamps, locations. Everything. I found a guy named Thomas Reed website, simple. No fluff, just discreet, thorough, experienced. I called. He answered himself. Voice low. A little rough. And I gave him the short version. Husband, cheating with my sister. Weird charges, family ambush. I needed to know how long this had been going on. What they were doing. Where. Who else knew? He asked for photos of them, last known routines, access to bank and credit records, their phone numbers, all of it. I emailed everything from that evidence folder and said, how fast can you work? I can have preliminary answers by Sunday, full report by Wednesday, he told me. Sunday is good, I said. I meet the lawyer Monday. I want to walk in armed. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Sunday afternoon, I was back in that nondescript office building where Thomas worked, sitting across from him as he slid a thin file across the desk. "This is just the start," he said, "but it's enough to confirm what you already know." Inside were photos. Grainy but clear enough. Brandon and Candace at restaurants, Brandon and Candace holding hands. In a park, Brandon and Candace walking into a hotel together and leaving 3 hours later. Every time I turned a page, I felt less sad. And more done. It was weird. He pointed at a photo of them walking into a building I didn't recognize. "That's an apartment complex," he said. "Unit 412 is leased under your sister's name, started 6 months ago. Rent is $2,000 a month paid from a checking account in your husband's name that you are not on. So there was a secret love nest paid for with my husband's secret single man account, funded by draining our joint savings." Cute, right? He didn't stop there. He had pulled their phone records. Brianna, my daughter, had been in constant contact with both of them for 6 months, almost daily texts and calls. My mom had increased her contact with them 3 months ago. Lots of 3-way calls and group chats. So the timeline went like this. 8 months ago. The affair started. 6 months ago. They got serious enough for him to rent her an apartment. Brianna figures it out 3 months ago. Candace pulls my mother into the circle, and 1 week ago, they all decide it's time to talk to me. I walked out of there with that file in my bag, and this thought in my head. They have been living a whole other story, and I was just background furniture in mine. Monday morning. I dressed in a navy suit, low heels, hair neat. My laptop bag full of evidence, and I walked into Rebecca Shaw's office like I was walking into a boardroom. Because honestly, I kind of was. Her reception area was sleek leather chairs, abstract art, smelled like money, and toner. A young guy at the front offered me coffee. I took it then. Rebecca appeared in the doorway in a red dress that said she didn't have time for nonsense. We sat, and I told her everything. Starting from the door, feeling heavy on Thursday night, all the way to Thomas's file. I talked like I was presenting a campaign, clear, calm bullet point in my head, and she just took notes, occasionally asking for a date or a dollar amount. When I was done, she flipped through the file slowly and then looked up at me. "You did a lot of my work for me," she said. "That's good. We can move fast. I don't just want out," I told her. "I want it to cost him something. I want him to understand that you don't get to cheat on your wife with her sister and walk off into the sunset." So we went through everything. The house was in my name, bought with inheritance. He had 0 claim. Retirement accounts were separate. Joint accounts, his car. My car debt. Rebecca laid out a strategy. We would file for divorce immediately. Cite adultery and irreconcilable differences. Include evidence of the affair and the financial dissipation. And ask for the house, my retirement, untouched 70% of joint assets, and joint custody of Brianna. She told me to open a new bank account in my name, only direct my salary there, and never talk to Brandon without documenting it. That afternoon, while Brandon was at work and Brianna at school, I went back to my house. Unlocking that door felt strange, like I was entering someone else's life. I went straight to what used to be our bedroom and started packing my clothes. Shoes, toiletries, my jewelry, my important documents from the home office, birth certificate, passport, social security card, tax returns. In Brianna's room, I stopped. Her bulletin board was covered in pictures of us. Her trophies lined up her stuffed animals on the bed. I felt this sharp ache, but I didn't touch anything. That room was hers, and I wanted it to stay that way. In the office, I found printed emails between Brandon and Candace stuffed in a drawer. Love notes, trip plans, discussions about the timing of my talk. It was almost laughable. I took pictures of all of it and put everything back exactly where I found it. Let him wonder if I'd seen them or not. Within a day, Brandon was served divorce papers at his office. A process server handed him the envelope in front of his co-workers, and Thomas, who apparently has a bit of a dark sense of humor, sent me a picture of his stunned face. My phone exploded. Again, calls, texts. How could you do this? We need to talk. You're overreacting. Think about Brianna. I ignored all of it and forwarded any relevant messages straight to Rebecca. 2 weeks after the ambush, Brandon somehow found out which hotel I was staying in and waited for me in the lobby. When the elevator doors opened and I saw him there in a suit I had paid for, I almost turned around. But I forced myself to walk toward the exit, like I hadn't seen him. Naomi, please. He stood up, stepping into my path. We need to talk. All communication goes through my lawyer, I told him, voice flat. Move. He followed me outside out into the front courtyard, where people were coming and going. Don't do this, he said. You can't just throw away 12 years of marriage without even discussing it. I turned around then because honestly, at some point, enough is enough. Discuss it, I repeated. Like you discussed it with me before you started sleeping with my sister. Like you discussed it before you drained our savings for your little romance. It wasn't supposed to happen. Did people fall out of love, Naomi? We grew apart, he said, like he was reading from a script he'd practiced in the mirror. Here comes one of those questions, do you think it just happened is ever a real excuse? Or is that just something people say, so they don't have to admit they made a choice? We didn't grow apart, I told him. You just decided to rewrite our history so you could pretend you're not the bad guy here. That's not fair, he shot back. You were always married to your job. You never had time for me. For us. I tried, I really did. But you were always so cold, so distant. When was the last time you looked at me like I mattered? And there it was, exactly what Thomas had said. He was telling people the story. Where I'm the cold career woman who pushed her poor husband into the arms of another. I just stared at him. When was the last time you mattered? I said quietly. Maybe around the time you started lying to me every day, around the time you decided my sister was more important than your vows. And then, like he had been saving it for dramatic effect, he dropped his bomb. Candace is pregnant, he said. 8 weeks. I'm going to be a father again. Everything around us went muffled for a second, like someone turned down the volume on the world. Pregnant. With my sister's child. Not just betrayal, but a permanent tie. A living reminder. He watched my face like he expected me to collapse. I took a deep breath, and what came out of my mouth surprised even me. Congratulations, I said. I hope you're prepared to support that child with your share of our marital assets, because you're not getting another penny from me. I pulled a copy of the divorce papers from my bag. The one Rebecca made me carry, handed it to him. My lawyer will handle everything. Don't come to my hotel again. Don't call me. Don't text me. Everything goes through her. I walked away and didn't look back. Only when I got into my car did my hands start shaking. But it wasn't from wanting him back or from grief. It was from anger and adrenaline and the realization that I was really doing this. I was walking away from all of them. Around that time, my best friend from work, Patricia, forced her way into the story. She'd been calling for days, and I'd been ignoring her because I didn't know how to explain any of this. But after that hotel scene, I picked up. She listened quietly all the way through, and then she said, "Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm picking you up. We're going to dinner. You're going to eat something that's not room service, and then we can cry and cuss and plan, because you are not going to let these people destroy everything you've worked for." So we did. We went to this little restaurant, dark, cozy, anonymous, and I told her all of it. At one point I said, "I feel so stupid. How did I not see any of this?" And she shook her head and said something I still hold on to. "You're not stupid. You're trusting there's a difference. The fact that they used your trust against you, that's on them." She reminded me that I still had a life outside of that mess, that I was damned good at my job, that I had options. And she was right. At work, we had a massive client pitch coming up, a tech company that needed help rebranding after a PR disaster. Crisis management reinvention. New story, all that. I took that project personally, standing in that boardroom talking about how sometimes the story you thought you were living turns out to be a lie, and how you can either cling to the ruins or build something better. I realized I wasn't just talking about them. I was talking about me. We landed the client. After the meeting, my boss pulled me aside and asked if I would consider stepping up as regional director for our Seattle office. Bigger role, more money, more responsibility, and, oh yeah, across the country. Seattle. A city where my mother didn't live, my sister didn't live, my cheating soon-to-be ex didn't live. It sounded like oxygen. "When would you need me there?" I asked. "End of next month," he said. "I know it's fast, but they need someone strong." I thought about the house that didn't feel like mine anymore. The city where every street held a memory with people who'd stabbed me in the back. The way my chest felt tight every time I drove past Brianna's school. Then I thought about rain and new office walls, and walking into a place where nobody looked at me with pity or gossip in their eyes. "I'm interested," I said, and that was that. So yeah. Plot twist, the woman they tried to tell was over, got a promotion, and a one-way ticket to a new life. The divorce dragged on like divorce always does. Brandon's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, and absent said I abandoned the family by taking the job in Seattle. Tried to get full custody of Brianna. Tried to argue he deserved half of everything. Rebecca shut that down. Hard pointed out that I had been the main earner, that the house was in my name, that he had spent tens of thousands on an affair, that accepting a promotion was not abandonment. Meanwhile, I wrote my own version of our marriage literally. One night in my tiny temporary apartment, I stayed up until 2 in the morning typing out a timeline, every sacrifice I had made, every late night, every business trip that paid for our lifestyle, every instance of him pulling away while I tried to hold things together. I sent it to Rebecca and told her, "Use this however you can. I'm not letting him own the narrative." By mid-November, I moved to Seattle for good. The company set me up with a furnished apartment in a high-rise, with huge windows overlooking the water. It was gray and rainy and gorgeous. I started running in the mornings because my thoughts needed somewhere to go. I threw myself into work, got to know my new team, spent long days in meetings and late nights planning strategy, and slowly the constant ache in my chest turned into a dull throb, then into something I could manage. Time passed. The divorce inched forward. One day my lawyer emailed to say the judge had approved most of our terms. House to me, my retirement, untouched 70% of joint assets to me because of the money he'd blown on the affair, joint custody of Brianna. It wasn't everything I wanted, because nothing could give me my old life back. But it was justice. Legal justice, anyway. Back home, things were not going quite as smoothly for Brandon and Candace. Through Patricia, who is somehow plugged into every piece of neighborhood gossip, I learned that when the baby was born, a little boy they named Carter, the fantasy kind of cracked. Newborns cry. A lot, money was tight. People in our community were not lining up to support, The man who cheated on his wife with her sister while she was working to pay the bills. His business lost clients. Candace was home alone with a screaming baby in a house she couldn't afford, and my mother was running herself ragged trying to help without actually fixing anything. One afternoon, months after I'd settled into Seattle, my phone rang with a number from my old area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. It was Brianna. "Mom," she said, and her voice sounded so much older. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've been going to therapy and I get now how badly I hurt you. What I said that night, taking their side, all of it. I'm not asking you to instantly forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I know I was wrong, and I miss you. I won't lie. I sat there on my couch in Seattle with the phone to my ear, and tears just streamed down my face. We talked for a while, carefully, not stepping on certain landmines yet. But she told me about school, about her therapist, about how living in that house with her dad and Candace had opened her eyes. "It's not the fairy tale they thought it would be," she said quietly. After we hung up, I thought about all the parents who never get that kind of apology, who lose their kids to a narrative they didn't write, and never hear them say, "I was wrong." That call was the start of something new for us, not a return to what we had, but the beginning of a different, more honest relationship. Now around this time, another man walked into my life, and no, he did not save me. I need to make that clear. I saved myself, but he added something good, where there had been nothing but damage for a long time. His name is Jerome. We met at a company holiday party. He was the architect hired to redesign our office space. Tall, quiet, warm eyes, easy smile, divorced, no kids, his own set of scars. We ended up talking by the drinks table for almost an hour about cities, buildings starting over, and somehow it just felt safe. When he asked if I'd like to grab coffee sometime, I said yes. And I didn't hear that panicked voice in my head screaming, "No men ever again," as loudly as it had before. Coffee turned into walks turned into dinners, and he never pushed me to share more than I wanted. He didn't compare me to anyone. He didn't complain about my job. He didn't make me feel like I had to apologize for being ambitious or for being wary. He just showed up consistently. While my life in Seattle got brighter, the situation back home got messier. One day, Candace called me out of nowhere, sobbing. I stared at her name on the screen, and out of pure curiosity, I answered. She was a wreck. No sleep, no money. Brandon barely showing up, my mom refusing to bail her out financially. She asked me to let her stay in my old house, said she couldn't afford it anymore, said I owed it to her because we were sisters. And here's where people usually have very strong opinions. I listened quietly, and when she finally took a breath, I said, "You need to move out of my house. I'm selling it. You have 30 days. "Naomi, please," she cried. "I have a baby. I can't just pick up and leave." "You should have thought about that before you slept with my husband," I said. "You are almost 30 years old. You made adult choices. You can live with adult consequences." I hung up, called a realtor, and put the house on the market. It sold in 3 weeks for more than I expected. I used the money as a down payment on a modern house in the Seattle Hills, with huge windows and a view of the water. My house. If you think that was too harsh, I want you to really ask yourself how many times someone is allowed to set you on fire before you decide you're done playing the fire extinguisher. At some point, letters started showing up forwarded from my old address. One was from Brandon, on expensive stationery full of, "I made a terrible mistake. It wasn't real. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Maybe someday we can be friends for Brianna's sake." I read it, felt absolutely nothing, except maybe a little contempt for the dramatics, and filed it away. Another letter was from Candace. Pages and pages of, "I'm so sorry. I hate myself. Everyone hates me. Please, you're the only one who can help me." Mixed in with descriptions of the baby, how beautiful he was, how she didn't want him to suffer. I walked that one straight to the trash and dropped it in without a second thought. Just to be safe, I called Rebecca and asked her if there was any legal obligation for me to respond. She said no. Divorce was final. I owed Brandon nothing, and I had never owed Candace anything in the first place. Somewhere in the middle of all that, Brandon's dad, Harold, called me and asked if we could meet for coffee when he passed through Seattle on a business trip. Harold had always been decent to me, so I said yes. We met at a quiet cafe, and he looked old or tired, in that way parents get when their kids implode their own lives. He told me he was helping take care of baby Carter, that he didn't want the child to pay for his parents' stupidity. And then he looked me in the eye and said, "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for my son, for what he did, for what he put you through. And I want you to know that some of us saw your worth. We know what he lost." Those words from him did something none of Brandon's apologies could have done. They gave me closure that wasn't about revenge or them suffering. It was about being seen. As for Brianna and me, we worked slowly. She came to visit me in Seattle for the first time about a year after the ambush. I met her at the airport, and we both cried like idiots in the arrivals hall. She met Jerome, and I watched her watch him, testing him, without saying a word. And slowly she relaxed. She saw how he talked to me, how he listened, how he never raised his voice, how he never made a decision without asking my opinion. One night on the deck, wrapped in blankets, she said, "I didn't know relationships could look like this." Near the end of that visit, she told me she was thinking about applying to colleges in Seattle. She wanted distance from the drama, from her dad's house, from my mom's guilt spiral, from her aunt's mess. "If you'll have me," she said, and I laughed through tears and told her, "This is your home too, always." So here I am now in a house I bought with money I fought for, in a city that feels like a fresh page, in a life that I chose for myself. The girl who walked into that living room thinking she was coming home from a business trip would not recognize this version of me. The woman who walked out of that living room with her suitcase still had no idea who she was yet. It took lawyers and courtroom papers and flights across the country, and late-night tears and early morning runs, and new love and old pain to get me here. People still ask me. Sometimes friends, internet strangers, everyone always wants to know. Do you regret it? Do you regret walking away from your whole family like that? And my answer every single time is no. I regret trusting the wrong people for too long. I regret ignoring my intuition, but I do not regret choosing myself. When they made it clear I was nothing but an obstacle to their happiness, they told me, "Your time is over," and they were dead wrong. My time began the minute I decided they didn't get to vote on my value anymore. So now I want to ask you for real. Not just as some YouTube script thing. If it were you, if you walked into your house and found your husband, your sister, your mother, and your child all sitting there, ready to announce they'd replaced you, what would you have done? Would you have tried to stay and fix it? Would you have forgiven? Would you have walked out like I did? Do you think I went too far? Or did I not go far enough? And beyond my little soap opera, here's the bigger question that keeps me up some nights. What do we actually owe people just because they share our blood? How long are we supposed to stay loyal to people who have no problem throwing us under the bus to protect their own comfort? And why is it that when a woman works hard, builds a career, and provides, it's so easy for everyone to paint her as cold, just to excuse somebody else's affair? I don't have all the answers. I just have my story. But maybe my story can help you look at your own life a little differently, your own boundaries, your own definition of family. If you stayed with me all the way to the end, thank you for listening. Now, I really want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Tell me if you think family betrayal is ever truly forgivable. Tell me if you think I was right to cut them off, or if you would have tried to salvage something. And if you've lived through something like this, if you've ever been told in one way or another that your time is over, and you had to rebuild from scratch, share it. If you're comfortable, you never know who might need to hear that they're not the only one. Like this video, if it made you feel anything. Subscribe if you want more real stories like this, and most importantly, drop your thoughts below. Argue with me. Agree with me. Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I'm right. Just be honest, because at the end of the day, that's all I ever wanted from the people who said they loved me.